He then walks up to Urban Meyer and says, right over there is where we planted the flag on your asses last November. Urban Meyer then reaches under the desk, produces the top of the 2024 national title trophy, which works as a great club. Hits Dave Portnoy over the face with it. And Urban Meyer predicts a Buckeyes victory to a massive pop. This is the College Football Enquirer. I am Andy Staples, here with Ross Dellenger of Yahoo, here with Steven Godfrey. Reminder, you can listen to us, but you can also watch us on the Yahoo Sports Network, our first ever streaming TV channel. Yahoo Sports Network is available to stream on all leading FAST services, meaning it's probably on the home screen of your TV, but it is also streaming 24/7 live on yahoosports.tv, where you can catch all the shows on your phone or your browser. One show that people may or may not want to catch, Ross Dellenger, is Fox's Big Noon Kickoff before the Texas-Ohio State game, which probably was going to be overshadowed by Lee Corso's last episode of Game Day. May not be now.
Yeah, fun times. You know, Andy, back in, I guess it was mid or early July, Fox announced, or it was leaked, that Dave Portnoy of Barstool would be joining Big Noon Kickoff. I think everybody's aware, probably most are aware, that Dave Portnoy is sort of a lightning rod. I think that's what he enjoys being, and that's what the whole deal is kind of built on. And so when
also,
you add somebody
fervent
like
Michigan alum, Michigan donor, helped do the NIL deal for Bryce Underwood.
Underwood, yep. And so it has been, fairly critical of specifically Michigan's big rival in the Big Ten. Been fairly critical too of, by the way, of the Big Ten commissioner and people in the Big Ten in general at the Big Ten office. So throughout the whole Connor Stallions situation. So this was announced in mid-July, and by late July, I think many people in the league, certainly some in Columbus, were in people in Chicago were expressing sort of their concern over having Dave Portnoy on the Fox Big Noon Kickoff. And as we've learned the last 24, 48 hours, there was an original a first report from Front Office Sports that Dave Portnoy was banned from Ohio Stadium for this weekend's game against Texas, and Ohio State AD Ross Bjork in the Big Ten both sort of released statements to us saying that he was not banned and that it's Fox's decision not to have Dave Portnoy on the main stage. And if you're not on the main stage, you're not usually inside the stadium at the end and the final segments of the show. And then Big Ten followed, saying that actually Dave Portnoy won't be inside the stadium of any league school this year, is at least their understanding from Fox. So I don't know how all that came together, but certainly the concerns that were echoed over the last month in this issue by many Big Ten members, probably impacted the way we're going to see Fox handle Dave Portnoy.
Okay, I have some questions, Ross.
I may or may not have answers, Godfrey.
Let's figure out why we're talking about this the Tuesday morning of week 1 of the 2025 college football season. And I would pause and just observe how amazing this sport, specifically its television partners, are at shooting themselves in the foot and going into business for themselves, as we say. Okay. More than one school objected. Was it to Dave Portnoy specifically, or Barstool as a brand, or both?
I probably think it was probably more specifically to Dave Portnoy.
Okay.
And maybe just some of the comments that he's made in the past about other schools and in the conference in general.
All right. Second question. This breaks on Front Office Sports last night, right? Specific, like timed specifically on this Tuesday. We also, I might add, have a fairly significant, if not incredibly unique, episode of the competing show on Game Day on ESPN, because it's Lee Corso's final show, right? So one might infer that this was tactically leaked to build up viewer interest specifically in Saturday morning show. Just hypothetically, okay? Does that feel like it could be a possibility here? Because what you're saying is that the actual objections to anything that like involving Portnoy, that was all like those conversations were weeks ago, right? This wasn't something where like
July.
Yeah. So Ohio State did not raise their hand.
Point, right.
Yeah. They didn't raise their hand on Monday afternoon and say, we don't like this. That didn't happen. This was already registered. Right. So magically this information became public last night.
Yeah, it's been around for about a week and a half that Portnoy was not going to be allowed in the stadium at Ohio State. Now, nobody said anything about other stadiums in the Big Ten, though I understand, Ross, that there may be other objectors, which, given Portnoy's active participation in Michigan's NIL efforts, you can understand that.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, in how it. I'm sure in mid-July, when they announced Dave Portnoy, I think I was at SEC Media Days. It was that week, I believe. Andy, weren't you there? Maybe can't remember.
I was not at SEC, but I think that was probably about that. It probably was that.
I think
week,
it was that week. Yeah, and the next week.
How
was
could
Big
you
Ten
miss that
Media
party,
Days
Andy?
In Las Vegas, and at Big Ten Media Days, it was shared with me that Portnoy would not be on the main stage. That was originally that was not going to be his role. Is that he wasn't going to be on the main stage. So at least my intel early on was that he was going to be off sort of to the side. Somebody explained it to me like, you guys remember how Game Day treated the Bear or something, right? Like he's got another desk off to the side or something, whatever,
right,
yeah. And
but he's allowed.
That's
in
how
the
it was
set.
explained to me. But yeah. So I don't know where but it wasn't explained to me then that he won't be sort of inside any of the stadiums at the end of the show and the final segments. That's obviously come about publicly the last few days, and I'm sure the concern expressed by people in the Big Ten and the Big Ten members to Fox probably, you would think, impacted, again, Fox's decisions on not having him in any league stadium, according to the Big Ten. That's what the Fox has told the Big Ten, that he won't be in any of the league stadiums. So it's sort of like there's a little bit of controlling the damage here. In sort of easing conference membership concerns.
Ross, this feels very, very different than maybe hypothetically the relationship between the Southeastern Conference and ESPN. I'm a little struck by what I'm hearing in that Fox and the Big Ten have been arm in arm for as long as we can remember and have sort of advanced as the second superpower opposite the Disney SEC Goliath. This definitely smacks of some division inside of that alliance, right? I mean, it seems like the Big Ten didn't want anything to do with Portnoy or the Barstool brand, and yet now they're kind of having to share the same oxygen because Fox is trying to advance its position as a pregame program.
What's interesting about that is everybody, like one of the big storylines the last few years is that the SEC gets too much national attention because it's its deal with ESPN and because of Paul Feinbaum, and it seems like all the other leagues are trying to create a Paul Feinbaum, for their league. And it does seem like this was sort of like at least Fox's angle, maybe, of this is going to be sort of.
Portnoy's a response to McAfee. Portnoy's a response
McAfee.
to Pat McAfee on game day. The difference is Pat McAfee was a pro kicker and obviously played in college at West Virginia. So it's a little bit different. And the other difference is obviously how active Dave is in donating to Michigan and how aggressively obnoxious he is as a Michigan fan, which is part of the act. It's all part of the bit. I just think they really missed an opportunity here. I wrote a column for On 3 about this, where if they really wanted to make this thing pop, if Ohio State wanted to make this thing pop, if the Big Ten wants to make this thing pop, if Fox wants to swipe some ratings away from College Game Day. So here's what you do. You don't ban him from the stadium. You don't keep him outside. You have him be banned from the stadium, to your point, Godfrey. Like, this is pro wrestling. You have him
definitely
be banned from the stadium. And then 15 minutes before kickoff, he sneaks into the stadium with a camera crew conveniently trailing him. He walks straight up to the desk.
All right.
Where
I didn't
Urban
realize
Meyer
I was going to.
and Brady Quinn are breaking down how Arch Manning is going to attack the Buckeyes secondary. He then walks up to Urban Meyer and says, right over there is where we planted the flag on your asses last November. Urban Meyer then reaches under the desk, produces the top of the 2024 national title trophy, which works as a great club. Hits Dave Portnoy over the face with it. Portnoy then collapses. They leave his lifeless body on the stage for the remainder of the show, and Urban Meyer predicts a Buckeyes victory to a massive pop from the crowd.
Full on WWE style, huh?
I did actually, oh man, things I didn't think I'd be doing this week. I did text with people from my previous life last night when this information broke.
This is why I wanted to talk to you about this, Godfrey.
I know.
First, I wanted to, how does my work shoot compare to a real one?
Your booking, as we would call it, is great. There's only one problem. This is what we're trying to create as a worked shoot, right? So a CM Punk pipe bomb. That's a very popular example, okay? And if you know what that means, great. And if that sounds like I just had a micro stroke, that's also fine. You're leading a more educated life. If you want Andy's booking to occur, here's the one error. It's Tuesday. So we're recording this on Tuesday morning. It's August 26th. We needed this to leak magically, either hypothetically from Fox or from Portnoy's camp or some hybrid thereof to FOS. They should have done it Friday, maybe like mid-morning. The reason why is that it would take hold, but Ross Bjork's Ross talked to you. Sorry, Ross, you talked to Ross Bjork I think it was too
many Rosses in this equation.
Yeah, I don't want to break in specifically to what you're doing as a journalist, but it takes my point is it takes Ohio State a second to react, right? So if you would have done this on Friday morning, you would have still garnered all of the interest, but it would have happened so fast before the Saturday broadcast that there would not have been time, Andy, to break the worked part of the shoot. Does that make sense? In other words, everyone would have believed that Portnoy was legitimately banned and probably, which is what Fox's intent is here, flipped over to see what was going on Fox on Saturday morning. They just started the work shoot too early so that legitimate journalists like Ross and everybody else could say, hey, guys, this is actually all Fugazi. Like, if they really wanted to stunt this, they would have done it 3 days from now.
We knew we were going to, after the story last night from front office, we kind of talked about, hey, we were going to talk about this on the pod, last night.
Right.
And so this morning, right, I woke up and I'm like, I'm going to text some Ohio State people, see what I'd need to know going into this conversation. And that's kind of how it evolved into, well, it's not completely factual. Here are more of the facts and all that. And so then it devolved into the Big Ten statement to me about how now he won't appear in any stadium. I don't know when that decision sort of was made.
Right.
But again, I was told maybe.
Yeah.
But I was told immediately after.
I'll help you with that. It was made this morning.
At Big Ten Media Day, I was told he wasn't this was mid-July. And it was told to me he wasn't going to be on the main stage. Like that was, it was, because I was actually going to write a story from Big Ten Media Day about it. I ended up not doing it. I wish I had done it now. But it was made pretty clear that Fox has made the decision that he won't be on the main stage. But that didn't necessarily mean that he wouldn't be in the stadium, right?
I checked really fast, guys.
Obviously,
14 Big Noon Saturday, on-campus broadcasts last year. 8 were Big 10, 6 were others, usually Big 12. And then this year they've already announced 3. 2 are Big 10, obviously this weekend, and they're going to get ready, get excited. They're going to Northwestern on September 13th. This is a show and a brand that is sort of synonymous with the Big 10, more or less, if not a little bit of the Big 12. I don't think the Big 12 would have objected to anything knowing Brett Yormark, but
the Big 12 would be like, please, can we?
They already have a title belt.
Have him parachute into the stadium.
They have a WWE belt.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, yeah, I'm interested ultimately in if there is any fracture or disconnect between the relationship of the most primary client here for Fox, which is the Big Ten, right? That's their richest sort of partner. That's the people they invest the most money in. This feels like a misstep at a high level. Credit to Fox /Barstool /Portnoy for creating the stunt, because there was enough gap in the way that this was sort of arranged where you could manipulate information and create this. They should have waited until Thursday night or Friday morning. I trust me, I have experience. I insist upon that part of it, because we in the media would not have been able to catch up in time. Otherwise, it is a non-story. And I do think that, we're not in the business of talking about other media, but like the Corso farewell is going to dominate this weekend.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great story because it's highly entertaining. It may be a non-story now, but it is highly entertaining. The idea, and that was how it was framed by the leak, is he was banned. And I will tell you, this is what everybody's been talking about for the last week and a half, that he was banned. This actually originated on an Ohio State-centric show featuring former Buckeyes linebacker Bobby Carpenter and Ohio State beat writer Austin Ward. The news of this, and then Front Office Sports followed up on it and got it from somebody, we assume Fox. So I'm just saying a lot of this may be semantics at this point.
Oh,
a lot of this may be a little bit of ass covering. Like, oh, we didn't realize we were going to get made fun of like this.
Andy, that's maybe the second most interesting point to me, aside from the sort of meta circus and all that, like the pro wrestling joke, although it's not a joke. Everything is pro wrestling. Trust me. If you see it once, you never see it a different way again in your life. But Ohio State has got to work on internal, external comms. This is what, I don't know what, but by whatever measure we want to create the largest brand in college football, the most professional brand in college football. Really, one could argue the first brand in college football to ever become national, sort of like Notre Dame and the Catholic Church.
If we had a draft, like if there were no conferences anymore, and we had a draft, the first pick would be Ohio State.
Yeah. And that's a bunch of Southern-born guys saying that. So what fascinates me is the mismanagement that bleeds out publicly, because we have had a series of, I don't know how to say this nicely on a family program, big feelings reactions that have been oversteps or overcorrections by Ohio State in the last year plus that have to stop, because they are making themselves so easily the butt of the joke. This doesn't have to do with losing games on the field, but you are almost more remembered in your national title campaign for, I don't know, trying to mace people on the field after a loss. And now you're supposedly banning, media personalities from entering your stadium.
Let me ask you guys.
We got to be tactical here.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this question: Is if Fox had hired Dave Portnoy, do you think Fox hired Dave Portnoy with the intent to not have him inside the stadiums on the giant show that they're hiring to be on? Do you think that was the intent when they hired him?
Ross, what you were privy
unlikely.
to the
unlikely.
Okay, all right.
I wouldn't.
And
think,
Ross is saying that as someone who's privy to the deal.
But again, I it was pretty made clear to me immediately after the announcement that at least his presence wasn't going to be on the main desk. Now, I don't know. That doesn't mean though that they didn't plan to use him inside the stadium, right?
Right.
Like,
well, I mean, from a production standpoint,
right?
that's it's a big desk. Like, it's already a pretty crowded desk because you've got Rob Stone, you've got Urban Meyer, you've got Mark Ingram, you've got Matt Leinart, you've got Brady Quinn. It's a very crowded desk to start with. So it may be that they weren't going to use him there, but I find it very hard to believe that they hired him with the intent to never bring him inside a stadium.
I would agree with that. So what you're saying was this was designed to be, his role is provocateur, obviously, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right. And that's
okay.
He's supposed to play the role McAfee plays on game day.
Yeah, I mean, one could argue that McAfee isn't even I don't know if McAfee's capacity is provocateur so much as it is just sort of like an unmedicated child, but it's, McAfee almost is a role of just is like, we want to artificially insert more energy into that program. Dave's going to come and try and say something a little bit more heelish, if you will, in the pro wrestling
my first thought my first thought when they hired him was, how long before Urban Meyer just punches him on the air? Because it may not take long.
I guess I'm just sort of struck by if we could all read this coming. If Andy just laid it out, you hired him for a reason. It's very obvious he's the provocateur. Why, as Ohio State, are you always biting on this? Why are you always reacting? It's like in the internet parlance of our time, they are the quintessential "you mad." Like, it is so easy to infuriate them as an organization. That has to stop if you're Ohio State. You can't be caught looking like this all the time.
Andy, you mentioned like the sort of just going full WWE, right? And there was like another like Big Ten school who called me back when, this was really simmering late July, early August, and said, we need to lean into this, right? We need to just all jump in and lean into this. Ohio State needs to lean into it. I'm like, that's a pretty good idea. And then, again, because I was kind of like working on maybe a story on this. Again, it's probably not going to happen now. I wish I'd have written it like a few weeks ago when all this was simmering. But like, I was kind of working on a story, so I was kind of building a story. I started calling around to ask people within the Big Ten, hey, why don't you guys just sort of lean into this thing? And it was made clear to me, good luck trying to tell like Ryan Day or Dan Lanning, hey, lean into this. When they're trying to win a
it's
huge
interesting because
game.
there is a story from the past about this. So the SEC network is being formed. SEC and ESPN have a partnership. They're trying to figure out who's going to be the face and the voice of it. Many coaches and school presidents did not want Paul Feinbaum to be that face/voice. It took Mike Slive, the then commissioner of the SEC, going and meeting with some of these people in person to convince them this is good for the brand. This will work. And there's still times they hate it.
Do they now? I mean, the Feinbaum brand has changed dramatically in when I was coming up, like Feinbaum on the radio was unhinged in a lot of ways and was aggressively critical of the Southeastern Conference.
The columnist was more unhinged. Like, it was fire everyone all the time.
Yeah.
But the difference here is Paul is not attached to one school. He went to Tennessee, but he doesn't play the giant Tennessee homer like, we got to crush Alabama, we got to crush Georgia, we got to crush Florida. He doesn't do that.
He does not do
Portnoy,
that. Yeah, you're right.
Portnoy is not only playing the Michigan against the world role, he's actively involved in recruiting for them.
Yeah.
Which is why
and
that
that's replicating Paul Feinbaum is very clearly not doing and would probably never, ever do.
No, Feinbaum's fundamental shift was in order to look. I mean, this is we're taking this off the rails a little bit. The SEC's smartest move was to embrace the verbiage of the lunatic fringe and then turn it into a more acceptable vanilla house brand. So it just means more. We can all one up each other with stories that involve like legal proceedings on it just means more, right? The Deep South is a deeply
how
disturbed
much more it
place.
actually means.
Yes. My favorite was always the story of a surgeon in Kentucky who was caught on camera branding the UK logo on a woman's uterus after a procedure to like make his surgeon buddies laugh, and then they didn't realize he was being videotaped by a medical school. You can look that one up. Like the SEC was smart enough to take that's a real story.
Oh my God.
The SEC was smart enough to take that insanity, bring it in house, clean it up, and turn it into like a marketing brand. And Paul was a big part of that, Andy. Like Paul's brand was terrifying to a lot of athletic directors before he went in house. And now Paul's program is subject to more or less approval and control by the conference, right? So he's
basically their attack dog when it comes to other conferences.
Because, and I think this is the point, Portnoy is he's a single agent for a single cause, and that's Michigan, to your point, Andy, where Feinbaum shifted so intelligently, at least for like bank account purposes, is that he became emblematic of a region and the South's deep-seated sort of identitarian thing of like, we're the South. We've been marginalized and sort of, made fun of throughout history. We're going to band together. Our identity works as it's the South, right? We sacrifice the individual school for the South. That doesn't work in the Midwest. Ohio State fans, if Minnesota makes the playoff, they do not care. They will not be moved by that. That's the big difference.
And the other thing with Feinbaum is it is his primary source of income. Dave Portnoy, this is a side gig.
True.
Yeah.
He runs a very large company that he once sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. And then because Penn Gaming wanted to get in business with ESPN, it's funny how this all comes together. Like, just gave it back to him. It's like, here, I realize we paid you for this, but you can have it back and continue to print money off of it. It's insane.
Just to show you how fluid, changing, whatever all this is. I'm getting messages now mid-pod from people at Fox about all of this. And it seems like things are changing by the minute, with all this.
Okay.
And not that anything we've said or like, I've reported is changing, but like clearly.
You mean almost like they're making all this up as they go along?
In the last couple days, there's a lot of there's a lot of decisions being made sort of on the fly here in week one.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. But to Godfrey's point, it's not an accident that it came out last night. Fox can use this. I want to read you guys a quote from Desmond Howard. This is what Desmond Howard said when they hired Dave Portnoy. He was talking to Barrett Sports Media. He says, they, as in Big Noon, want to compete. I like those guys. To me, our competitor has been NBA on TNT because we're always battling against them for the sports Emmy. No disrespect to those guys, Big Noon again. I'm sure they do a fantastic job. That is the ultimate disrespect. The ultimate. Like, that's what Fox is up against. Like, they have a competitor who does not think about them at all. And that's what they're fighting against.
That also feels very much, Andy, like the 5-ish years I spent at a not WWE competitor on cable trying to, I don't want to stretch this segment out much longer. We did a bit one time where we turned an ex-tag team from WWE into the initials of Vince McMahon. We took a camera crew. This is a true story, okay? We took a camera crew to the parking lot of their corporate building. We did several other things, some of which might have broken like some minor laws in Connecticut, all in an attempt, Andy, to get WWE to notice us. We did this for months. We crashed WrestleMania. I was in charge of like an $80,000 street team one time at a WrestleMania to just get on their, just make them acknowledge us, right? And it failed because you think a lot of things about Vince McMahon, who's not a good human being. He was at that point in his career a master chess player, and ESPN should, I'm not here to give free advice to ESPN, should not blink. They should not acknowledge any of this. They should continue to act like the other team doesn't exist, because that, giving them your mind share and attention automatically gives them life. It builds their equity.
I suspect they will pretend this doesn't exist. We might get an offhand comment from McAfee at some point down the road, but what's funny is this would be a great McAfee show segment, but I would ignore it if I were him.
That's the risk, Andy, is that they have shown in the past they do not have full control of McAfee as a talent. It's the way that deal is structured, where there's a licensing agreement, but also there's a whole different apparatus at ESPN that manages McAfee versus like any other on-air talent. If McAfee's ego is affected by this in any way, if there's something between him and Dave, that's going to be the break in the armor for Bristol, is that if McAfee recognizes this and decides that he wants to turn it into a bit. And then at that point, we have fully devolved college football pregame into absolute regional AWA nonsense. Go watch soccer.
Which is where it needs to be, because that's what it's always akin to anyway. Gentlemen, when we come back, let's get some more cutting promos, pro wrestling, booking. We're going to talk about booking in the SEC, where they're now booking 9 conference games. You see how I did that? We'll be right back.
Nice.
Welcome back to the College Football Enquirer. Before Dave Portnoy and Fox and Ohio State pushed it off the page, we were going to talk about the big news that came down on Friday in college football. The SEC will go to a 9-game conference schedule beginning in 2026. There are a lot of tentacles to this story, Ross, because it's not just the SEC going to 9, which should satisfy the Big Ten, which has been pushing them to go to 9 because they play 9, which should have an effect on the future of the college football playoff. But within the SEC alone, you have, everybody has 3 annual opponents now. And that seemed to strike the biggest chord for me with the readers / viewers / listeners. Like, who are those 3 going to be for every team? It's wild.
Yeah. Andy, and I know Godfrey followed this for years, right? It's been a debate since Texas and Oklahoma, a serious debate since Texas and Oklahoma got in the league on, are we going to go from 8 to 9 games? In fact, I had one of the former SEC athletic directors text me and say it's not just been a debate for the last 4 years. They could remember the first year that it was debated in the room, and I think it was like 2011.
I was going to say, Ross, this came up after the addition of Missouri and A&M. I remember the first, I think.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, the 2011-ish.
Yeah, the first SEC media days after Missouri and A&M was public, whatever cycle that was. That was the conversation of, hey, because we're adding 2 at the time, don't we need to beef up the conference schedule? And some of that talk at the time, the genesis was, I want this rivalry game. I don't want this game, which is what we're going to get into today, which I'm actually really excited about. Yeah. Like this panel.
15 years. So finally, Greg Sankey, who's been a sort of proponent of 9 games for a while, right? And has sort of tried to like push the league, I think, there. Finally got it sort of over the finish line, probably with help from new ESPN funding and with help from the college football playoff sort of uncertainty right now, I would guess. So let's talk about who does everybody have of their permanent opponents. This is going to be, let me lay out like how I think, and you guys know this, but like for the listener, lay out how the SEC is supposed to decide this, which, funny enough, they already decided this. This was already done, right? 3 years ago, maybe 20.
Well, so I did my guesses,
or 23, maybe.
I did my guesses, and I had Oklahoma as one of Florida's permanent opponents because that's what was going to happen.
Yeah,
when they were going to do this in 2023.
Yeah. Andy, can you walk that out a little bit for people who aren't familiar, because that was a thing at the time, and I think I know Bill Connolly got there as well. Like, can you explain why
Ross had the whole list?
Because it's just. When you get down, so, okay, let me set the sort of how the league did this and how you would think, going to do it again. Because they are going to do it again. The list is changing from the 3 years ago, I've been told.
Oh, no.
But, so the number one they're going to look at, obviously, is primary and secondary rivalries and keeping those intact. Number 2 is geography. And number 3 is this sort of parity, balance, equity type deal, where, as we learned from Nick Saban 3 years ago, because he kind of let the cat out of the bag in an interview with me in Tuscaloosa, I think it was like May of 23 or February of 23, was that they're going to compile, they're going to kind of tier the SEC schools based on the last 10 years of winning percentage. So if you're in the top tier, you're in the top 8 or the bottom 8, then that determines, kind of the third consideration of your permanent opponents. So how it was described to me 3 years ago was, if you were in the top tier, you were going to get two of your 3 permanent opponents were going to be from the top tier. 1 was going to be from the bottom tier. If you were in the bottom tier, 2 of your 3 permanent opponents were going to be from the bottom, and 1 was going to be from the top. So they were trying to do that, and they came up with the list. And so to get to your question, which Andy can answer too, Godfrey, is when you start doing all that, you're left with a few like schools, and you're kind of like, what do we do with these schools? And Oklahoma and Florida were those schools.
Right. There's just who was left. But what Nick Saban was not happy about was Alabama's obviously going to play Auburn and Tennessee every year. The Iron Bowl is one of the biggest rivalries in sports. Alabama-Tennessee is one of the games that they kept the schedules very boring during the divisional era to protect.
Yeah.
Alabama-Tennessee and Auburn-Georgia were the 2 they were protecting. So they have to play those. But LSU was going to be the 3rd. And this is what I would do, because why would you leave those ratings on the table?
Yes,
Alabama, LSU produces huge viewership every year.
Yeah.
So that's what, when I did my guesses this time, I did guess based on ratings. Although I guess I gave Auburn a little bit of a break because I thought, oh, they've already got Alabama and Georgia. I can't make it too hard on them, so I'm going to give them Vanderbilt. I should have given them Florida or Tennessee, which are traditional rivals, which would get better ratings. So maybe I should stick to my own plan. But Ross, they've got some analytics firms looking at this. They're trying to create some balance. I don't know that they will. And because this is getting you extra money from ESPN, I would just give them the games that are going to get ratings, because they're creating a college football playoff system where you can take some losses and get in.
Is there one rivalry, finger quotes for those of you watching on our Fast Network? I'm going to do them into the camera. Okay. Rivalry, because there's a layered sort of situation with who you consider a rival in the SEC. And none of us are going to dispute, like, okay, Iron Bowl, Egg Bowl, like all of these things are going to happen. We're not going to get rid of that. Texas and A&M, they're going to play. Red River, they're going to play. It's that second kind of third tier level that Andy talked about, where I feel like we're probably going to have to break some bad news to a couple fan bases of, hey, this isn't really your rival, or maybe this is a one-sided hate affair instead of love affair. Are there any games off the top of y'all's head where it's just like, hey, we're going to lose that, or this isn't a real thing, to you?
I'm not going to lose anything. Because
I mean, I'm asking specifically, like, let me give you an example. If you're in Arkansas, who are you for sure keeping?
You have to play Texas. Like
Missouri.
Texas is actually the easiest one to do this for.
Probably.
Okay.
Texas plays Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. If they don't do those three, that's stupid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Arkansas, the reason why I bring up Arkansas, you have several generations, or Southwest Conference sort of identity, right? We now have a significant chip of the Southwest Conference in. Andy said automatically, look west. Those are basically going to be your teams. But there's also an entire other generation and a half that are now looking at, are we going to lose the game? Like, so are we not going to go basically to our neighbor, Ole Miss? We're not going to play them every year? Or are we not going to play those SEC West teams that we sort of built a football generation defining ourselves by? This is where it gets a little tricky, where you have rivalries sort of wax and wane, like micro rivalries. Maybe sometimes a coach leaves, maybe, from one school to another, like a Tommy Tuberville situation or Houston Nutt situation. Those become so paramount and important. And by the way, they're pretty good ratings. I mean, Alabama,
the best example of this is Florida, Tennessee, Godfrey.
Yes.
They didn't even, they barely ever played before divisions.
Yes. And you barely ever played. You brought that up as like, well, of course they'll do that. And so here in Nashville.
Oh, no, I didn't say of course they'll do that, because I don't know if they will.
Okay, this is a great examination. When I sort of came of age and it started really locking in on the SEC, Florida, Tennessee was the best game that you could put on television, that you could play, period, full stop.
It was the SEC championship game, and it happened in week 3 every year in the 90s.
It happened in week 3. The team that lost was basically done for the year. Maybe not the best strategy in hindsight, but in the 90s, like this was
Tennessee in 97 did come back and win the league after losing the game.
Yes.
Shout out to George for the 89-yard interception return of Peyton Manning interception.
Right, it was the LSU Alabama of the 90s.
Oh, by far.
Right, it was Florida, Tennessee, and then it was LSU Alabama.
Right.
Because the East sort of fell off until Kirby got to Georgia.
And then it was Georgia, Alabama. Right.
Yes.
And so it just goes on and on. And
so let's,
but Georgia and Alabama hardly ever played in the regular season.
Yeah, true. Right.
One reason for this, you mentioned Texas A&M proposing this, and they did propose it in 2019, is because Georgia has not played at Kyle Field yet.
Yeah.
Texas A&M entered the league in 2012.
Yeah. It's 2025. It's not 1997.
Yeah.
If I'm Tennessee, I know I'm going to play Bama, right? Andy just said that. And I know I'm probably going to play Vanderbilt in state, right?
So you're praying for Kentucky.
So this is my conversation. Yeah. If I'm a Tennessee booster of a certain age, or a fan or whatever, or I'm Josh Heupel, I'm sitting in Knoxville now going, Kentucky? Florida. Tradition, extra win.
Yeah.
Sorry to Kentucky, but my guy's got like a $34 million buyout that you all of it in 30 days. You're going to be stuck for a while. So, like, this is where it breaks down, I think. This is where some hard decisions are going to have to be made, Andy. And I do think game quality might be sacrificed, because you're like, what do you do if you're Tennessee?
Well, here's the thing.
Do you lean into quality?
Game quality, but remember, you're getting everybody else twice every 4 years. So if you're Tennessee, you're going to get Texas or Oklahoma or LSU or teams that you never got in your stadium before.
Sure, but do you want to have to deal with Florida every year to preserve what we feel like is history and tradition?
I'd say they don't. Like Florida and LSU, I didn't put them together because both those schools want to stop playing every year.
This was the next rivalry I wanted to talk about. It was a byproduct of what Andy said earlier. There was a forced tradition because of Alabama, Tennessee, where one Old West team and one Old East team were forced to play each other annually.
Yeah.
And if you were Ole Miss, you benefited from playing Vanderbilt. But if you were LSU, you got stuck in what I call the glory of I-10 or something. LSU and Florida became permanent opponents, right?
They played every year since the 60s, so it wasn't like they weren't already playing.
But they were locked in, and I've heard so many complaints on both sides, depending on the year, about this game being forced annually. It created some fantastic football, like off the top of my head. Like
fantastic on field and off field.
Yes.
Ross and I have had the front row seat for this stuff.
Yeah. It's been amazing. I mean, arguing over hurricane relocation, we're bouncing fake field goal passes that are the Miles Urban Meyer game. Like just off again.
Somebody threw a shoe.
Yes.
Shoe in the fog. The shoe in the fog.
I was going to get there.
Upset and
it makes total sense for both of those programs to say, this has been great. I'll catch you on the rotation. But aren't we losing something from a quality standpoint? I want to watch that game every year. But the Florida alumni that I work with, Ryan Nanny, he's like, no, it would be better for Florida if we weren't locked into LSU. If we did catch a Vanderbilt on the rotation instead or whatever.
Yeah. LSU, and I think a lot of LSU fans sort of feel the same, but I think also there's a segment that's kind of like sort of sad, right? Shedding a tear for this hated rival. But I feel like neither school historically really wants to play one another every year. They would certainly rather play somebody from, again, the bottom tier of we're doing the two tiers, as I mentioned, the bottom tier. By the way, like Nick Saban, when he told us about that tiering, right? He went back and it was the 10-year winning percentage. And so, and I think Andy's done this too. I did a calculation. Now this is like a couple years old, right? But it was like the top tier was Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, LSU, Florida, Texas, Auburn. Mm-hmm. And in the bottom tier, or in A&M as well. And in the bottom tier was Missouri, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt. I used the Big 12, records for Oklahoma and Texas. And but obviously Texas or some of these schools would be moving, right? Tennessee would now be in the top tier.
Texas would not be, if you're using Texas from the 2010s, that was not a particularly great program through that.
Yeah, they were barely in the top tier, right? Barely, but they were. But like moving tiers, like Tennessee would be in the top tier. Oklahoma,
that's the one that I feel
first couple of years, they may be dropped to the bottom.
That's the one where if you look at their Big 12 record coming in, they're going to be in that upper class. But as their current state, I don't feel particularly confident about their future.
We say permanent, but does this have to be permanent? Could they do a couple cycles and say,
just a
let's
couple
shuffle
cycles?
this up?
True.
What? 8
also,
years
Ole Miss,
or 6? Or
Ole Miss may be in the top tier.
Yeah,
they were they were in the borderline. They were 44. So the Texas A&M was. This was like 2 years old. Texas A&M was the last school in the top tier in 53% winning percentage. Ole Miss was the third highest school in the bottom tier, 44.4. So they probably would have moved up.
They're going to wash out.
A lot of these things do change.
A couple of those.
Andy, didn't you do like a new winning percentage sort of breakdown? I don't know if you did that.
No, I didn't do the new one yet, which I should. That would be a good math. I hate math, but that would be a good one. No, I did the Blue Blood programs using all-time winning percentage. So that's been my winning percentage math of late. That would be helpful to probably figure out what these things are going to be.
Do we have a beat on, and I think they may be the most unique program in the entire current SEC. Do we have a beat, Ross, on LSU's preferred 3? Because they exist in the core of SEC history.
I think they got to play A&M. I feel like they recruit against A&M so much.
I think
that 7 overtime games cemented it for me.
Important too. So I mean, I think A&M and Ole Miss are probably the two that I would say that the school, the program sort of would want. Yeah. Despite the TV numbers,
right?
I doubt they would say we would love to play Alabama every year. And guess what? Alabama wouldn't say that either. Nick Saban said that on the record to me 3 years ago. That's why he was so upset about the SEC sort of pecking order.
I love that story, Ross. It's so great because I mentioned that Nick Saban was for the longest time a proponent of 9 games, but then when it came down to who Alabama would actually play, he's like, hold up. And Alabama was like, he never said that. I'm like, here's what he said to Ross.
Yeah, he did. He did say that. I was going to go back and actually while we're talking, find that story because there was a quote in there about TV. He kind of subtly mentioned that we're making decisions because of TV now. Is that how it works? Kind of sort of thing.
We've been making decisions for TV as long as any of us have been doing this. LSU, the reason I brought him up is I think if you took 10-year slices of the program, I think it would, and you asked the rank and file LSU tailgater who their rival was, it might be the only program in the SEC where that answer changes every 10 years. It's kind of amazing. Ross, I know you and I live around with and know a lot of LSU people, and you really show your age when you walk up to an LSU fan shows their age when you ask them who their rival is. Because I know a lot of people in their mid-30s now who couldn't imagine not playing Alabama every year. That defined their season.
Yeah. So Nick Saban did say this to me. I ended up finding the story. So it was March of 2023. He said, we got 3 teams and 2 of them are in the top 10 and the other is in the top 10 a lot. Look historically over a 25-year period. The 3 best teams in the SEC East are Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida. Look historically for 25 years, the last 25 years, and the 3 in the West are Alabama, LSU, and Auburn. And we play them all, he said, very disgruntled from his office. So there you go.
Did he raise his voice
I was trying to find what he said about TV, but he did bring up name, image, and likeness stuff. And it was clearly the NIL talk was sort of geared toward the Volunteers, I think.
Oh, yeah. They just got Nico.
Subtle, yeah. Yes.
So could you tell at that moment he was about to sort of throw his hands up and quit? I'm serious. Was there that underlying tone of I'm not going to do this anymore because the rules are changing?
I don't know if that was the moment, but I remember thinking, and I think it was my one surprising prediction for the next year was that Nick Saban was going to retire, because you just kind of felt a lot of things, not necessarily specifically that story, but you just kind of felt it that he was sort of tired of dealing with certain things, and there you go.
Rules change.
When we come back, we're going to talk about a coach who did not want to embrace NIL, but he is now. Ross Dellenger had a great story on Baylor's Dave Aranda, who's playing one of the most interesting games of week 1. We'll talk about that when we come back. Welcome back to the College Football Enquirer, and Ross Dellenger with another tremendous story, this time about Baylor's Dave Aranda, drinker of 9 cups of coffee. Or I don't know. Actually, I got to ask you this, Ross, because you talk about it being very early in the morning. He's about to drink his 9th cup of coffee. Does this imply that there is a 10th, 11th, and 12th later?
No, it was late. No, it was
it was 6 p.m., not 6 a.m.
Yeah, it was p.m. It was p.m. So he had paced out the 9 cups of coffee. Basically, if you did the math, probably once every, 1 cup of coffee for every 90 minutes, I guess.
When does he? So it was 9. Is it? We're talking about regular drip coffee, not an espresso kind of situation,
Texas
right?
pecan roast.
Texas pecan roast drip coffee. Yeah, because he's obviously serving as head coach, and he's doing the defensive coordinator, play calling, and he's overhauling his defense too. So he's doing a lot. There's a lot going on there. With
so you're saying maybe he's ending up with 10 cups of coffee a day.
That's what it seems like. Yeah, because he was about to go get at 7 p.m. get his 9th cup. So,
okay, so that would put you at around on average 950 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah, seems like a lot.
So the FDA recommended limit, which I have to now observe because I was getting heart palpitations because I drink a lot of coffee, is 400.
Wow, I thought it was 200. Is it 400?
No,
it makes me feel bad.
Wow, no, it's 400 where it's you really got to stop or we're going to go to a doctor. So if he's actually doing this,
I'm not there yet.
Yeah. So if he's actually doing this, then he's in the neighborhood of 950. I usually get closer to a 500, and I start to really be I'm not going to sleep and maybe have a panic attack. So if he's really doing this, then he's probably going to lose a couple years off his life.
So, well, I think a couple years ago might have cost him a few years too. When they were not adapting to the NIL world, they were getting their butts kicked. Their offensive line was not prepared to be competitive in the Big 12 because Dave Aranda basically said it at Big 12 Media Days last year. He's like, because we didn't pay anybody and we didn't have good enough players. Yeah. And so now they go into the season opener against Auburn, which, by the way, has a fantastic roster. Friday night game, one of the more intriguing games of week one. By the way, something we'll probably talk about a lot on Thursday. This game's on Fox. If you have YouTube TV, you may or may not be able to get it. We'll find out. Massive carriage dispute, which may or may not end this week. So we'll talk about that on Thursday. But let's talk more about Aranda, Baylor, and this game specifically. You mentioned, Ross, that Dave is taking over defensive play calling, which Dave Aranda versus Hugh Freeze chess match should be fun.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is a guy who coached his way off the hot seat last year. But it doesn't mean you're off it forever. How does he...
No.
How does he make this more permanent?
Yeah, they won their last 6 regular season games, basically, I think, right? To get...
Yep.
I think they got like one of the nation's longest regular season win streaks at 6 because everybody's like beating each other up in the country. It seems like these days. So there's not very long win streaks. So last year he called the defense for the first time since he called LSU's 2019 defense when they won the national championship. So it had been 5 years since he called the defense. And obviously a lot of things have changed about offensive football. So I think he learned a lot last year that his defense sort of needs to evolve in different ways. And he even described himself as like old man set in his ways, like yelling at cloud, even though Dave Aranda's 48. But doesn't act like any college football coach you've ever met. No, if you were blindfolded or not even blindfolded, if you sat down with Dave Aranda and didn't know what he did as an occupation, right? You'd assume definitely not yoga. Think. Yeah, you would definitely not think he's a football coach at all.
Or that he lives in Waco, Texas.
Or yes. So, but he kind of realized, I think last year, that he needed to evolve a little bit, that his defense, which was like for years has been known as like the most creative, innovative defense. And he's like this mad scientist of defensive football. He realized that offenses were sort of figuring him out. And so it's time to change. So he spent a lot of the offseason and a lot of this camp sort of changing the defense. And we'll see it on display against, as Andy said, one of the like sort of offensive gurus in football of Hugh Freeze, who, as Dave kind of described, Freeze, along with a lot of people in the Big 12, which is the reason he's having to change his defense, is one of those coaches who creates sort of, he calls them beaters, offensive beaters that really just see the defense's look, right, and have something to respond to it with. So I think there's plenty of programs in football that have good enough athletes, right, at big programs that they don't really have to do that, right? They're just like, we're going to run our stuff right at you. We don't really care what you're in. But a lot of teams in the Big 12 and Hugh Freeze historically aren't like that. They create these beaters. So he's overhauling his offense so he can beat the beaters, he says. But obviously a huge part of this story is NIL, as Andy mentioned, and how they really didn't pay anybody anything in 2021 and 2022, the first 2 years of NIL. And then in 2023, they decided to give everybody on the team the same amount of money, basically like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 each. And Dave looks at that now. I think I left this quote out of the story. Unfortunately, it was stupid of me, but he said that was, quote, embarrassing of us, that we actually thought in 2023 that we could just pay everybody a couple $1,000s and everybody gets the same amount. And I think they realized that after the 3-9 season in 2023 led them to then realize, okay, as Mac Rhodes, the AD, says, we just have to do this pay for play thing. Like, we just got to do it. Everybody else is doing it. We're going to do it. So they started doing it. They started getting transfers, and it's kind of led us to where we are here, where they're investing in the program fully with the rev share. Despite their concerns with that, including the school president, who expresses concerns over academics, players still having to go to class despite getting paid $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. Will they still go to class? Right? Will they still like meet all these other requirements? It's a question that plenty of schools are asking across the country.
Okay.
I am sure they'll log into all their online classes. I have no doubt. I have the utmost faith.
This is a good point, Andy, because there's certain schools that don't allow that, right? Like I visited Duke last week. No, they have to go to class. They have
that ain't
to
what
be
you're paying for.
The classroom.
Like, if you're the rank and file parent, your student's parent, you ain't paying that tuition for online classes.
$100,000 tuition, $90,000 tuition. Like you got to go into actual class.
Good to see Baylor's actually concerned about the moral compass of their athletes. That's refreshing.
I had a feeling was coming.
So Ross, the quarterback was making the same as like the backup DB.
That's what they said. Yeah, in 2023.
Okay, that's fascinating.
They basically I didn't know Texas was
the same.
Bold strategy, Cotton.
So that
Texas embracing socialism. Breaking news.
And that wasn't just Baylor. Like I remember talking. I think it was either 2022 or 2023. What's the year that Cincinnati made the playoffs? 21, 22,
21.
So after that year, so 2022. I remember talking to Luke Fickell, who was a coach then, and he was talking about how they paid all their athletes the same. It was like everybody got like a couple $1,000s or something. So I think several coaches at several schools thought this was the way to do it. Brian Kelly at LSU, actually, he did the same thing. Like I think his first year at LSU, that was his idea too, was everybody's going to receive the same. That way you keep the locker room intact. A lot of people, shockingly, did this.
Does Brian Kelly's coordinator make the same as his direct player performance? Like, give me a break.
All of these people have worked in bunches of different places. Somehow we all manage. Like every company I've ever worked in, everybody makes something different, and we're not all walking around punching each other. Like
it's just amazing.
How stupid were these guys to think this in the first place? Like the entirety of the world operates in a way where people don't all make the same amount of money, and yet we manage.
Tell you what, man, the economic philosophy of some of these individuals waxes and wanes dramatically when it comes to their own check.
Maybe they skipped classes when they were in college. Maybe they missed basic econ.
Anyway, all right. I don't want to drag this into that conversation. It is interesting, Ross, that you're pointing out a collection just by name of coaches who we certainly like held esteem for the performance they created on the field, and who have all suffered some sort of valley or setback as NIL has really taken hold of the sport. So Aranda, we're talking about Fickell at Cincinnati/Wisconsin. That may have been just that he hired Phil Longo. We talked about Dabo in previous episodes.
Phil Longo kicking ass at Sam Houston State again. So
didn't they lose this weekend?
They lost, but
they lost. Yeah. All right.
I predict they'll kick ass.
Can we get a graphic real fast? And that was your Conference USA update. Ross, what's interesting to me about your piece is the geography of we're not talking about Cincinnati. We're talking about Baylor. We've had several conversations already about Texas Tech and the shifting landscape potentially of the Big 12. I was actually on the Dave Campbell podcast earlier this week, and I kind of asked those guys as the experts locally, do you feel like we're going to get to an arms race thing if the Tech experiment shows results immediately? What I assume as a non-Texan outside of this world is that they're all just throwing bags of money at each other in a fight, right? Like I've seen that Landman show. So does this mean TCU and Baylor are going to suddenly comport themselves like a Texas Tech? And there's kind of some debate about that. Like, it seems like the commitment in Lubbock is more aggressive. Obviously, it involves an ex-player. I think that's a big part of it. Baylor, for a long time, was sort of known as, hey, we're going to throw some money around. The McLeans, right? The Astros ownership family. They built this giant stadium. It was one of the Art Briles era was very well funded. But if they're not keeping pace in NIL and rev share, should we Baylor's supposed to be good this season, but now I'm kind of curious how long that could last if they're not going to be as aggressive in paying the players as a Lubbock is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, what Lubbock doing and a few others seems to be a strategy of sort of this enforcement's not going to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Like we just believe it's not going to work. And Linda Livingstone, the president of Baylor, was on the NCAA board she was a board chair during the last 3 years, right, during the NIL era. So she got the front row seat.
So she should know it's not going to work.
Well, she's hoping it works. And I didn't have room to write about this there, and I'm hoping to use her quotes in another story. But I talked to her about what if it doesn't work? What if you don't get federal legislation? And she actually was open to, probably going to have to bargain with the athletes in some way.
Okay.
Like we don't want them to be employees, but we'll probably have to find a plan B of bargaining with the athletes. So it was an interesting conversation with her, but obviously like her and many others, they're hoping for federal legislation. They're optimistic on it. Others, like maybe Texas Tech, aren't optimistic and don't think it's going to happen and don't think the enforcement is going to work. And given the College Sports Commission's current state and what's happened the last few weeks with it, in the legal challenges with some of the NIL clearinghouse stuff, they'd be right to have questions whether it's going to work or not.
Ross,
if only someone could have predicted that.
I know.
Yeah. Oh wait, everyone predicted that.
Yeah.
Ross, I want to go back to the kind of more of the football part of this for a second. Dave's had 2 winning records in the Big 12 since he got there. I mean, you throw COVID into the mix. That's shocking to me because of the amount of respect that he has as a football mind. I think one of the kind of narratives early on was that this guy was decidedly not Texan, not in that group, because he shows up at a time where a lot of those Texas programs are hiring like ex-high school coaches from the state, people who are mobbed up, who are networked, who are going into these high schools and knowing everybody.
Matt Rule was not of Texas, but he hires Joey McGuire on his staff immediately.
Yeah. I was going to go there. Was that Matt Rule had set a precedent, but Matt Rule seemed, Andy, to have, like, as you said, identified that problem and created a solution pretty early on. He then created Texas Tech's head coach. Does it feel like they're Texas enough now, or is that? Are we already sort of working out of that trend? Because I think pretty much at every FBS stop now, it's like a Texas guy, with the exception of Elko, although he had coached there before under Jimbo.
Yeah, I don't know. Like one of the things brought up when I was down there was this defensive overhaul, and Aranda pointed out 2 of his defensive staff members are former Gary Patterson TCU sort of guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he did bring over some of those guys. And
Jake Spavital has worked in the Big 12. He's
Texas
State
too. He was Texas State guy,
and he was Texas State's head coach. So
Spav's a Texas guy. Yeah. That's curious.
Definitely have they definitely have those connections, because Dave was he's a complete outsider. Yeah, right to all of that.
Yeah, I think you guys would agree. I like Dave a lot. And Matt Rule a lot. Those are 2 very different personalities. When you walk up and sort of shake their hand for the first time, I think Matt Rule could talk to you. You could drop Matt Rule in Buenos Aires, and he'd be recruiting very well locally in a short amount of time.
Mm.
Yeah, he would make friends very quickly. Dave is more introverted, and he'll tell you that. He'll tell you.
The thing is, you can
not
get him
like
going to talk. Yeah. You can get him like rolling. I mean, we were in there for 25 minutes. It was a 25-minute interview. Okay. I asked 6 questions, maybe.
Oh, nice.
Like, I mean, he was rolling on stuff, especially when it came to overhauling the defense, right? The X's and O's stuff that he gets in and digs into.
Yeah.
He started rolling pretty good on that. And then after turning the recorder on and we walked around the facility a little bit, he started sharing fun LSU stories of his days there, which always entertaining, right?
Yes.
Always entertaining.
Well, he was there for a particular period, so
he was there. And think about it, he was also there for the last year of Les Miles.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
He's got the transition, he's got the Les stories, he's got the Orgeron stories, he's got the championship stories, he's got all, because he left obviously when it was at its height, and then it kind of.
Oh yeah, Dave was described to me as like the nicest character in the Baton Rouge Game of Thrones. He was the one guy who were like, oh, I hope he doesn't die while all of the palace intrigue was going on.
That was such a crazy time. Like, I remember I was a beat writer then from 2013 to 2018 covering LSU locally, and so it basically spanned a lot of Dave's time there. I remember every offseason, starting as 16, 17, 18, all the way through. Every offseason, Dave was courted for a job. I think the first offseason, it was like the Green Bay Packers. And the second offseason, it was like the Texas A&M defensive coordinator job. And then, he would sort of think about leaving. And I think he seriously thought about leaving a lot, very seriously. Yeah. But LSU just kept on coming back with more money and more money and more money until he was the highest paid coordinator in the country, right at one point.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't leave. And his family, I think, liked Baton Rouge actually a lot too. And so it was always a point of like, we got to do whatever we can to keep Dave Aranda those 4 or 5 years.
That patience and also the money helping, obviously, is a really good example of, I think, the new trajectory, because I had covered some coaching searches where he's the number 1 or number 2 candidate at like a Colorado State or a Utah State.
Yeah.
His name got a lot of play in those Mountain West jobs, right? Like I know I know he was in on a Colorado State, at least they wanted him. And then you wait a little bit and you stay at a cushy gig where you're making millions to be a coordinator. And like you said, your family's happy. And then, okay, bam, I'm straight to Baylor.
You get a power conference
That's a
job.
good example of how we're changing foundationally the coaching ladder in the industry.
Yeah, I thought he was going to leave for Utah State. I remember that. He was like a finalist. He interviewed and everything. And I thought he was going to go. And yeah, he did. He's the kind of guy, though, right? Like we talked about how different of a person he is.
Yeah.
Like he sort of has the patience that maybe some others wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Well, also Mac Rhodes and Linda Livingstone staying patient with Dave when they could have cut bait.
Yeah.
Because now that they're playing the same game as everybody else, I think Dave's results probably improve. We're going to find out. They're playing a really good team on Friday night. On Thursday's show, we'll probably break down whether you're going to get to watch that game or not, because there's a looming carriage dispute, which is always fun. But we're also going to talk a little Arch Manning. Yeah, Arch Manning's going to make his debut as the starter for Texas at Ohio State. Whether Dave Portnoy is inside or outside the stadium does not matter. We always bring it back. We'll talk to you on Thursday on the College Football Enquirer.